You won't believe what you're about to see. The View panel turned into a frenzy of insults and shouts when Donald Trump Jr. found himself cornered by the panel over his father's character and business dealings. But I think that apart from the usual intellectual and emotional flatline of the show, perhaps The View became interesting for once with a character like Trump Jr. at the center of it, fighting back against accusations and innuendos. Watch this clip and you'll see why.
Recently, you've been very outspoken about how Hunter Biden has benefited from nepotism.
Yes.
And you say, I wish my name was Hunter Biden. I could make millions off of my father's presidency. Yeah. And your father tweeted this. He said, your father encourages people to buy your book. I think that's benefiting from your dad's presidency.
Hunter Biden utilized his father's vice presidency to magically end up on a board in Ukraine with a language he doesn't speak, on a business he knows nothing about, for $83,000 a month. If I did that, you guys would lose your mind.
You know what smacks of ill intent here? Trump Jr. was actually called on the show to discuss his new book at the time called Triggered, which at least partly explains why he would accept the invitation in the first place. And yet the book was only nominally glossed over for a few minutes in the show before unleashing a barrage of accusations like what you just saw from Sunny Hostin. For starters, I think you can gauge the caliber of those accusations by what Sunny just said there despite being a lawyer herself. I mean, did she really just create an equivalence between a vice president's son allegedly benefiting by being on the board of a foreign energy company ranking in millions to a man putting out a tweet on his own social media to promote his son's book? You can ask the ethical question around both, but nowhere near are both of them in the same legal universe. Sunny Hostin of all people should know, and the fact that she'd still bring it up like that likely woke Trump Jr. to what he found himself in. And by the way, this news of Trump's tweet had actually clouded much of mainstream media for a few days back then, with news channels and publications blowing it way out of proportion with statements like, quote, Trump is using his Twitter account to try financially benefiting his son. It's a misuse of public office, and it would be an official misuse of public office if it was anyone other than the president. But you've seen nothing yet, because bad comparisons were only the start of a segment that seemed to be getting heated by the minute, and Trump Jr. clearly had enough of having to defend his father's moral character each time.
To her point, he also called Mexicans.
He said some coming across the border, and that's a fact. Look at what's going on at the border.
Let her finish. Let her finish.
Called Mexicans, some Mexicans. He attacked the handicapped. He bragged
That's
about
also
it.
not true.
Listen, we heard the access. Hold on. We heard the access tape where he bragged about grabbing women by their genitalia. She's talking about, that's what Megyn is talking about. She's talking about lowering the discourse to his level, which is horrible for this country. Even if people are working, we don't want to have a country like that.
Neither do we, but that's where it stops. The fact is, when Trump first rose to the scene, he was responding to the ebb and flow of the nation's pulse. That means being abrasive, funny, and controversial, which occasionally went too far. Does his rhetoric become a problem for him? I would argue certainly, but anyone that thinks incivility in American politics started with Donald Trump does not understand that one person just is not enough to make that big a change. Trump was a symptom, not the cause. He was an outburst of the bubbling resentment and frustration that many people had been feeling as the social and political pendulum swung too far to the left. It has been proven as a fact that a scared population will always prefer an authoritarian strongman over a weak and timid ruler, and that kind of persona will always have its downsides. It's also worth asking the question, aren't people allowed to change over time? That quickly became the most relevant question for Joy Behar after Trump Jr. brought up this next point.
We've all done things that we regret. I mean, if we're talking about bringing a discourse down, Joy, you've worn blackface. Whoopee.
No,
you said that Roman Polanski.
I'm sorry, and don't.
You said that Roman Polanski. It wasn't when he was a child. So let's talk about.
So let's talk about this. So you want to bring this up? The question came up.
I did not go in blackface, please.
No, she was not in blackface.
Thank you.
Sorry, listen, being black, I recognize blackface. This I can say.
I think I know what Joy Behar would say in response to that. She didn't intend it as offensive. Or it was a long time ago. Or that we're all missing the context. And you know what? Maybe that would be correct, but no one can imagine Joy Behar giving anyone else that courtesy or leeway for smearing them. That's why it's a problem. Either own it for yourself or allow people to contextualize or redeem bad past actions for themselves. Just for a bit of context, Joy Behar's already practically admitted to donning blackface during a party in her youth. Watch this clip from 2016.
That is me.
My word. What year is this? Circa
I
what?
was 29. It was a Halloween party. I went as a beautiful African woman.
Oh, yes, you ain't black.
But that's my hair. That's my hair.
You can be, yeah, but it is. So the whole point of
Why
it is
are you
that curly
upset with
hair
me
is
now?
coming back. I thought
That is me.
Did you have tanning lotion on?
A little, I had makeup that was a little bit darker than my skin.
It's going to fix it.
But that's my actual hair, though.
I love it though.
See what I mean? What's incredible that I think most people would forgive her for something that happened all the way back in the 70s, only if she wasn't so opposed to doing the same for others, and that's the heart of the problem. We aren't living in the same kind of America that we did 10 years ago, let alone 50 years ago. That means people are allowed to outgrow their past selves.
Now that you've broken this piece of ice, because I guess this is the fight you wanted.
It's not the fight I
Yeah,
want.
it is.
But if we're
Because
talking
when
about character, if we're
because
talking
when-
about these
Are you
things.
questioning my character?
I'm not
No,
questioning your
talking about
character. I'm
father's
talking about
character.
you're questioning my father's character.
I'm
and
not,
I say
I'm
we
sorry,
all have done
I didn't
and said
question
things.
anybody. I simply said that when you're talking about that your father's taken more heat than anybody else, that it's not so. Instead,
As a president?
and when, yes,
Come
as a
on.
president,
It's
yes.
ridiculous.
He's getting crushed
Who
every
has?
day.
I think,
He's
I
a
think the Central Park
president.
Five took a lot more heat than your father has taken at his hand.
By the way,
Name a president who's taken more heat than my
everybody
father.
stop. Hold up,
criminal
hold
justice
up,
reform
hold
versus
up.
attack. President Trump.
We'll be right.
That last part is true. Donald Trump and the mainstream media had a very rough relationship throughout his presidency, but it would be naive to think that the animosity was simply one-sided. It's certainly true that the media has developed a knack for covering Trump and policies from that era negatively, whether it be something like the border crisis or foreign affairs. In fact, a study from a couple years ago found how nearly 95% of the times that Donald Trump is mentioned on mainstream media, it is often in a negative connotation. If you've watched the MSM in the last few years, it actually doesn't sound too off, because it's truly rare to see platforms like CNN or MSNBC running a segment on Trump that is even neutral, let alone favorable. But as it regards The View, it's not a show where you could even expect an environment like that. This segment was on the edge this entire clip, and it could have spilled over at any time, and I have to be honest, I've never seen The View throw all polite courtesy to the wind with any other guest, with that talking over and pointing fingers at each other. But perhaps the best we can take away from it is that the panel finally came alive with the presence of someone like Trump Jr., who pushed back enough to give the audience a debate at least worth watching.